15 minutes to the top of the hour before I get into the discussion on how you can meet the emotional needs of your children or people or young people you oversee or serve as a guardian to. There's been some traffic situation as of last night and this morning, and that's due to the closure of the Spintex Road underpass in Accra. So road users using the Medina route all the way to Adenta to East Legon and even the Spintex Road have been complaining, and many of you have turned to social media for answers. You can't understand why that kind of traffic situation was there as of last night and this morning, and it's because the underpass that leads to Spintex has been closed, and the Ministry of Roads and Highways has released a statement, and they're apologizing for the inconvenience caused, but they're promising and hoping that by midday today the Ghana Water Company Limited can fix a broken pipe along that way so that the road will be opened. We'll be speaking to someone in this whole issue later in the day, someone who's very conversant with our road networks later on our other bulletins on which routes you can use so you can avoid the traffic. But now let's talk about children. And in this day and age, usually most parents are concerned with meeting the financial and material needs. You can pay your child's school fees. It's good, it's great. You can buy them books, you can let them travel outside the country for summer vacation. That's great. But researchers tell us that a lot of times when children don't have emotional needs met, it trickles down later in life and creates a lot of emotional dysfunctions. Talk about timidity, talk about inferiority and superiority complexes, talk about that attitude of you can't discipline me, because my parents never disciplined me. We'll be talking about that, and to join me have that conversation is a lecturer of psychology at the Methodist University here in Ghana. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate that you could be here. Now let's start like this. What is the level of importance attached to emotional needs for children?
Well, extremely important. We need to appreciate that children, all human beings, let me begin from there, are a bundle of three things. We are a bundle of our physical, a bundle of social-emotional, and a bundle of our cognitive. So we think, we feel, and we behave. And all are intertwined, right? And relationship is extremely important. And so for children, because we are not an island unto ourselves, and we live among people and relate to people, and the capacity we need is a strengthened emotion, it is very important that we meet the socio-emotional needs or psychosocial needs of children. We cannot just be focusing on the physical bit of it, giving them food and all that, and then also their thinking and how they're able to, without necessarily meeting their relational needs, which where the emotions are very important.
Okay, some argue that probably culture could be playing some negative role in this, why parents are not able to express or show love. Sometimes they're not able to show emotions, build contacts with their children. Sometimes you go to certain families and they don't even hug at all, which for a lot of people, they may think, oh, what's wrong if I hug or I don't hug my child? But it's a way of showing love. It's a way of showing comfort. It's a way of showing I'm here for you. How can we, deal with this thing about culture? And for many parents, because it wasn't done for them, it's difficult for them to give that kind of love or show that kind of emotional need to their children. So how would you advise they go about it?
Well, first of all, to do something about anything at all, you need to understand. And I'm happy that you've mentioned culture. Because we have cross-cultural evidence about how developed economies, how they emotionally relate to their children, and how culture that are interdependent. We have individualistic cultures and interdependent cultures. We are interdependent culture, developing countries. And what makes us understand the impact of culture is understanding the developmental niche. We have three things once again: the physical and social settings of children, where they sleep and all that. Then we have the ethno-theories. In other words, the sayings, the folklores about how children are brought up. And once again, the thinking of parents. All these three influence how children become. And so what has been handed over to parents, they hand it over. If parents grew in a certain way, touching is not very, very needed, or is not very much emphasized, they grow up not touching. And but it is interesting because we grew up in a social setting where touch is extremely important. We were wrapped at the back of our parents, were carried all along. So touch, physical contact, is part and parcel of our growing up. Unfortunately,
but as it goes along, we lose it.
We must then understand the impact of modernity on how contact, because contact means time, and parents don't have time. I mean, can you imagine, after 6 months of giving birth, you are required to come to work. You are completely removed from your child. And so touch, you don't have much time to touch your children, to hug them, to hold them. You know, these are very important things. And we need to understand that even if you have little time, you need to contact, you need to, physically hold your child, because it is very important that we don't just grow to become very big people without the milk of human kindness, as Shakespeare will put it. Depending on how you bring up your child, you can drain out the emotional kindness from that person, and the person grow up very, very psychopathic. In other words, heartless, because he doesn't know what fellow feeling for another person, because that department of his life hasn't been nurtured. And there is also what we know, that the nurture, our genetic makeup and our environmental coming together to make us who we are. And so even if you are predisposed to have some emotional stuff, it must be nurtured. Emotions, we are all given birth with some emotional attributes, but the ones who develop it are those who are given opportunity to nurture it by virtue of their environment. And parents need to understand one thing about the brain. We talk about emotion as if it emanates from the heart. No, it's in the brain. There are brain regions responsible for emotions. And researchers, neuropsychologists, and have found that our brain keeps on developing right from the womb till you are born, until somewhere in adolescence, you are still developing your brain. Which part of your brain receives more stimulation matures. The other parts that do not receive stimulation do not mature. So let's take a child who is brought up in a chaotic environment. In a very chaotic environment, times of war, times of confusion at home, maybe there is domestic violence at home, you need to take your guard, you need to protect yourself. What aspect of the brain that is elicited to function is the part of the brain that only secures the child. It is not about the part of the brain that ensures how the child relates emotionally or how the child thinks logically. You are just feeding that part of the brain that the child must need to survive. So survival.
And could that be a reason why most of the time for children who grow up in such environments end up becoming or end up living a replicated life
The
later?
environment is extremely important. It shapes us. It nurtures us. So the environment you grew up in really determines, to a large extent, what you become.
Okay. So let's talk about parents now. And like you mentioned, a woman who's just given birth 3 months after is required to come back to work, and the contact time is really little. Parents leave the house as early as 5 a.m. sometimes, get to work, come back at 6 p.m. The children also come back from school pretty late. There's little contact time. Even during summer vacations now, that sometimes you think that parents would want to bond with their children. They send them off to vacation classes. And so there really is little time for parents to attend to the emotional needs of their children. Some parents cannot even tell if the child is going through a problem in school. They can't tell if my child probably has seen a guy or a young man. She doesn't understand why she's feeling the way she's feeling. She can't talk to mommy about it. A young boy can't talk to daddy about how he feels, and so he turns to friends and all that. How can parents maximize at least the little time that they have with parents to be able to meet their emotional needs, show them love, show them acceptance, affirmation, and also discipline them?
Yes, parents must do all this. There's an African saying that absence does not bring up a child. Absence does not, really summarizing all the things that we are talking about. If absence doesn't bring a child, then presence is required. And parents must understand this, that they are very, very influential in the life of their children, not only in terms of their physical outlook, but how they relate emotionally, and must invest time. What you invest in is what you get. And so it is very difficult, but they must understand that their children need them, and their children are not adults. It is said that in the world of the child, in the world of the adult, the child is a cognitive alien. In other words, children do not think the way we think. Sometimes it is incredible. You are late for work, as if your child's time is synchronized with yours. And I have seen parents literally dragging their children, beating them. Why are you not hurrying up? As if your time synchronizes with the child's time. No. Children are in their world, and we need to step down to meet them and allow them to be children and grow up responsibly. By mentioning responsibility, what am I referring to? Some parents also are very relaxed, laissez-faire, no regulation,
no
nothing,
discipline.
Absolutely nothing. That is growing the child growing in the wild. When the child grows in the wild, you have a flower, you don't keep it, you don't groom it, you don't nurture it. It grows wild and not
as beautiful
as you'd want it. The same thing applies to human beings. We need to nurture children. We need to let them understand boundaries. Extremely important. We need to be firm, but affirm them. They're two different things.
Can you give an example, make it a bit practical?
Absolutely.
In an instance, how you can be firm, towards your child, but also affirm them?
Yes. I mean, the child must know that this is not done. When you eat, you have to wash your bowls. It's not negotiable. The child might throw tantrums. Well, you need to ignore the tantrums and let the child wash the dish. Even how you potty train. There are some children who really rule their homes. It is what they like that they do. They will not eat because they don't like the food. How can you tell me you don't like the food?
You know that, and quite recently I had an encounter with a woman and her grandchild, and she says, "Oh, your mother has destroyed you because this will not happen in my house."
Absolutely.
I mean, when you cook banku, she says, "No, I want jollof," and she won't eat it.
It's laughable. You are not doing your child good. Not only at the emotional level, but worst of all, at the physical level, because the child must eat healthy food. And the child doesn't know which food is healthy and which food is not. And it's the responsibility of parents to insist firmly that you eat, not under my roof. You are not hating your child by teaching the child to become responsible. No. So we need to draw a line. Now, affirming a child is a child coming to you. You need that the child needs something from you. He needs you to hug the child, to hug me, daddy. Sometimes you are sitting by your laptop. Your child is calling you. You are not minding the child. You are
lack of attention
and ignoring the child. And if you adults are ignored, It's painful. Children also have feelings. And the more you ignore the child, the more the child feels rejected.
And that's probably timid later in life.
Absolutely. That feeling of rejection robs the child of his self-esteem. And it's a snowballing effect. If in the house I am not valued, I'm not affirmed, then I am good for nothing. The child doesn't understand that you are hard pressed for time, and that is the reason why you are not attending to him. It's just a matter of, you don't like me. And the child becomes a prey for predators.
Okay. Now let's talk about that. You know, in this part of the world, we have pretty large families. And sometimes what you observe is that one child may feel that it's not balanced, that he pays more attention to her or to her than to me. And so the child grows up feeling like I'm the odd one out. For such a parent, what would you advise in terms of, you have a lot